All right, joining us now on ZBT is especially enjoyable guest for me, being the resident movie and television buff. But this gentleman had a 20-year career in the Marines and then followed that up with his current profession, working for the last 35 years in various projects. Some you might recognize: Platoon, Born on the 4th of July, Saving Private Ryan, Mission Impossible, Band of Brothers, just to name a few. But joining us today is Captain Dale Dye. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Great to be with you.
It's great to have you. And just to start, how did you find your way into the Marines? Because as I mentioned, you had a 20-year, very fulfilling, very decorated career in the Marines before you even got into Hollywood. So what was the impetus for joining the Marines?
Well, I had graduated from Missouri Military Academy, and I had great visions of having a stellar career as an officer.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to get into the United States Naval Academy. In fact, I tried 3 times and failed all 3 times. I had, played too many sports and chased too many girls in high school and hadn't paid enough attention to the STEM curricula, if you will.
Sure.
And so I was pretty down about it. There wasn't any money in those days. There weren't great opportunities for scholarships and that sort of thing. And certainly a bozo like me wasn't going to get an academic or a scholarship. So I was pretty down about it. And I was walking along a street in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, kind of southeast Missouri, where I'm from. And it was sleeting. And I was miserable. And I didn't have any idea what the hell was going to happen with my life whatsoever. And I see this big sign outside of a post office. And it's got this Marine, this lantern-jawed, rock-jawed Marine in dress blues. And he's pointing a finger. And he's saying, "Ready?" And I looked at that and I said, by God, I think I am. So I went in and enlisted. And that led to what I think was a really adventuresome and wonderful career. I'm proud of every day I served and very happy with what happened.
Mm-hmm. So really
Even
serendipity.
the bad times were good.
Right. So really some serendipity there with that sign. And then you joined at 1964, and then 1965, we find ourselves embroiled in Vietnam, and you found yourself in some of the most iconic battles early on in those days in Vietnam.
If battles can be iconic, yeah, I was
maybe
there,
more
right,
well known is a better way to put it. Well-known
probably
battles.
so.
Yeah.
Right time, right place, or wrong time, wrong place, depending on how you look at it. But I spent about 33 months, all told, on the line, and in particular, I think what affected me most, what taught me most about human nature and human beings in combat was Tet Offensive 1968. I fought in Hue. And boy, that was a meat grinder. It really was. We had no idea. We'd been taught to fight in the jungles and sort of a anti-guerrilla warfare configuration, and then comes Hue. We were in the middle of a huge city. And things were so close. You fight in jungles and in forested areas, and you tend to shoot at shadows and at muzzle flashes. In Hue, it wasn't like that. In Hue, you were looking right in his beady ass eyeballs, and he was looking in yours, and the better man survives. What it did for me, not only did it imprint on my psyche forever, but it showed me, I think, that in combat, in close combat, what you see is the absolute best of mankind and the absolute worst of mankind.
Certainly.
And I think anybody who's seen that and survived it, it'll mark them forever. Now, having said that, I don't mean that it creates huge psychological scars. If we're healthy, we can learn to survive that. We can learn to deal with that, but we'll never forget it. And I think it's a good thing that we'll never forget it. That's a windy answer to what you asked, but there it is.
No, it's a great answer, but you're absolutely right. It will shape you for the remainder, not just your career in the military, but then the remainder of your life. So I can certainly see how that would resonate with a lot of people. And you had a somewhat of an unconventional career in the Marines only because you were a Mustang, and you decided, what was the decision to go from the enlisted to the officer side?
Well, it was a bit out of my hands, the truth be told. I had reached the rank of Master Sergeant. And at that time, the war was over, or our involvement in the war was over. This is around 1975. And the Marine Corps had a new commandant, a Medal of Honor man by the name of Wilson, who decided that he was going to clean up the Marine Corps. He was going to take all of the stuff that had the bad vibes that had come with Vietnam, and he was going to clean it up, and we were going to get back to basics, and we were going to get back to leadership and that sort of thing. And to do that, it's kind of a Marine Corps thing. We're very big on Mustangs. And to do that, he decided that he was going to take some proven enlisted leaders, senior enlisted leaders, and make them officers. And use their experience and their leadership potential in a broader reach. And so I was called into the commanding general's office and told in no uncertain terms that I was headed for Quantico. And I said, no, see, wait, because I'm going to make sergeant major eventually, and I don't have a college degree, and the general just said, shut up. And when you hear that from the CG, you shut up and you go to Quantico, which is what I did. But because I didn't have a college degree, I was commissioned after OCS in the basic school as a warrant officer. So I became a warrant officer and served as a warrant officer for about 3 years. And then I had an opportunity to convert my commission. I was a CWO, commissioned warrant officer, and I had a chance to convert my commission. So I applied, and during that 3 years that I had been as a warrant, I'd gone to school, and I'd managed to get a degree from the University of Maryland.
Okay.
You know how that happens. You go to school at night and
Right.
so on. Well, I did that, and got a degree in, of all things, English literature. I think the Marine Corps was shocked to its very soul that I got a degree in English literature. But they managed to convert my commission. So I went from chief warrant officer to first lieutenant, and then made captain. And at about that point in my career, we were involved in the Middle East, and we had sent some folks to Beirut, Lebanon. So I went to Beirut in 1982 and 83, and that was kind of my last quasi-combat assignment.
Right. I mean, so you're the first gentleman I've ever met who has served both enlisted, warrant, and as an officer. So I think that in and of itself is interesting.
Well, it gives me a broad base of reference, you know, and I've used that in my follow-on career.
Right. So let's talk about your follow-on career. You served for 20 years in the military, and then did you just wake up one morning and say, you know what, I really want to make a go of it in Hollywood, or did you find your way there in another way?
I'll tell you, when I retired from the Marine Corps, I was really a little lost lamb. I had no idea what I was going to do. I knew a few things. I knew that if I didn't do something, I'd end up at the VFW on a bar stool and become the resident barfly.
Right.
And that wasn't good for me. And I knew that if I took a job in the defense industry somewhere and became a cubicle rat, I'd be a suicide in 6 months. So, I'm just not that guy. So I got to thinking about it, and I said, look, what can I bring to the table? And I drank a bunch of beer and did a bunch of fuzzy-headed navel gazing and tried to figure out, what were my assets. And a common denominator seemed that I'd been a movie fan. I'd seen every war movie there was. And what was common there was that almost all of them pissed me off.
In what way?
they weren't us.
Mm-hmm.
They missed who we are. They missed our heart, our psychology, our dark humor, how we survive things. That was missing. We were all portrayed either as poor schlubs, drafted by an ungrateful country, or we were flag wavers, or we were unthinking lifers, and all of that was nonsense. And I just got to thinking, when you're ignorant, you can do a lot of things that people tell you can't do. And I think that was my case. I said, well, why are they doing this? There's got to be some reason they're doing this. That's stupid. That's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that the truth is much more dramatic. So I think I'll just go out to Hollywood and unscrew it. Well, yeah. What I mean by, when you're ignorant, I had people tell me, look, what are you doing? You're nuts. They've been making zillions of dollars for decades, making war movies without some clown like you coming in and telling them they're all wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's a better way to do it, and the truth is more dramatic. I was having a tough time, even though I was finding my way in to talk to people in showbiz. What I was finding was that there was a certain bias against military people in Hollywood, and it was simply this: people who had never served had no idea that people who had served might have some creative input.
Sure.
They thought we were all nose pickers and knuckle draggers, or we would be doing what they're doing and making movies and,
right.
and that sort of thing.
Right.
And that attitude was really there.
Mm-hmm.
And they were looking at me and they were saying, hey, look, how couldn't you can't be creative? You spent most of your life in the military, wearing a uniform, doing what you're told. How can you be creative? And I was really on my last legs. I'd tried for about a year
mm-hmm.
out here in Hollywood, and really had run up against some absolute stone walls. And I'd tried everything. I'd tried the Marine method. I would go on a studio lot and spot some guy wearing a tie and carrying a briefcase, and I'd snatch him up by the stacking swivel and say, "Hey, you make war movies? Well, you're screwed up, and here's why." Of course, I'd get escorted off the lot, and so I was about to give it up. I was about to say, okay, I'll go be the bar flyer, the cubicle rat, or I'll go be a cop, although I'd been shot too many times to really want to get involved in that sort of
mm-hmm.
thing. So I had learned to read the trade papers, Daily Variety and the Hollywood Reporter and that sort of thing. And I was paging through them one day. And I noticed a little article, I think it was an Army Archer's column in Daily Variety, that said a heretofore relatively unknown writer-director by the name of Oliver Stone was going to do a movie based on his own personal experience in Vietnam as an infantryman.
Right.
And I said, oh, Christ, here it is. I mean, if I can get to this guy, he'll get it, what I'm trying to tell him about what's wrong and what's right with war movies. And I would tell you how I managed to get his home phone number, but I'm not sure the statute of limitations has run out.
We'll let that one slide then.
Yeah, let that one slide. But I did. I got his home phone number and I called him. And I said, look, you don't know me and I don't know you, but if what I read is true, you need me to help you tell this story.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess anybody but Oliver Stone probably would have had me arrested.
Right, but having served himself, I'm sure that boded well for you.
Well, I made this quick pitch, and it resulted in a meeting that we had, and we kind of sniffed each other like strange dogs, examining each other's bona fides. And I said, look, and I know that no actor, no matter how great he is ever going to be able to understand what was in our mind and in our hearts and in our guts in Vietnam unless I expose them to that. And so he said, maybe you're right. And he gave me 3 weeks in the Philippines with 33 actors, many of whom were unknown at the time: Tom Berenger and Willem Dafoe and Forrest Whitaker and Johnny Depp and Charlie Sheen and a bunch of others. And I took them into the mountains of the jungles in the
Mhm.
Philippines. And for 3 weeks, I beat the snot out of them. I made them understand exactly how we thought,
Right.
how we felt, how we treated each other.
Mhm.
And I brought them down out of there, and they were just mentally and emotionally, they were just like we were as 19-year-old kids in that jungle. And when we began to do the film, it paid off because they had been trained so well and under such arduous conditions that they couldn't lie.
Right.
They couldn't lie on screen. And that came through. It really smoked through. So we made a little $5 million movie, chump change in today's
Mhm.
world, and we brought it home. And lo and behold, we won 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director for Oliver.
Mhm.
And he was gracious enough to mention what a big asset I had been to the making of the film.
Mhm.
And so what happened is all those people who were throwing me off the lot previously now wanted my phone number and were
Yeah.
calling me.
They were knocking down your door now. Now that
That's right.
you got
Yeah.
blessed off by an Academy
Nothing
Award winner.
succeeds like success. You know.
That's it. That's it. So did you, having fought in the war yourself, did you have a sense of responsibility to these men and ultimately all the audience that was going to see this film to make it right? Or did you have any sort of apprehension being
Well,
on the set of a film about a war you fought in?
I had apprehensions because both Oliver and I had many occasions of serious flashbacks
Mm-hmm.
because we were making it so real. And there was some emotional pain in that. There was some psychological pain in that. But I had an agenda, and I continue. That agenda has never changed since I got into this business. And it's very simply this: to shine some long overdue light on the men and women who've worn our uniform and who wear our uniform today. I think they've been mistreated in the media. I think they've been misrepresented in the media. We're doing better, and I like to think I had a little bit to do with that. But I want, and they deserve better treatment,
Mm-hmm.
a more understanding treatment. Because look, this is America, and those of us who wear a uniform serve the nation, serve the people of the nation, because the nation is the people.
Mm-hmm.
And without getting on a soapbox here, I would tell you that we need for that nation that we serve to understand us.
Mm-hmm.
They really need to understand why we're all a little bit wacko half the time, and what service does to us and what it means to us. They need to get a glimpse in our minds and in our hearts and in our guts. And what occurred to me, frankly, was that the popular media is the place to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I would love for every young American and every old American, for that matter, to read all of the wonderful books that have been brought out about the war experience. But we're trending away from that. People just won't read. They won't sit still long enough. And so the popular media is really the platform, and that's what I locked onto, and I'm still trying to do it to this day.
Yeah, and that movie Platoon kind of really set forth in motion a career that now has spanned multiple decades, not just as a technical advisor, but as we saw even in Platoon, as an actor as well. Did you set out to do both, and how do you decide? Am I going to act in this one and be the technical advisor, or one or the other? What is that process like?
Well, early on, no, I did not set out to be one, to be an actor.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, on Platoon, which was my first acting debut, if you will, Oliver drafted me. He said, "Look, you're the company commander. All these troops think of you as the company commander, so you're going to be the company commander." I said, "Oh, listen, wait a minute. Now these guys have been to drama school, and they've studied this, and I'm just a schlub." He said, "That's right. You're just a schlub who commands men, and you understand leadership, and I want you to do that on camera." So I did, and I have to say that the young guys who were in the platoon were really supportive of it. And what happened after that was that the critics noticed. And they said, "We don't know who that guy is, but he's convincing."
Yep.
And so it kind of led to it led to a lot of other things. And suddenly I became an actor. And what I discovered was that I enjoy it. Because it's, once again, going back to that agenda, it's an opportunity for somebody who knows the drill to portray the drill on screen. And it's never been hard for me. Look, I have always been that, I guess it's my Irish heritage or something, but I'm always that shaggy dog storyteller around the campfire. You know,
Sure.
I'll keep you there for 45 minutes to tell you a story that's all BS anyway. And I like that. I've always been that kind of, I like to entertain people. I like to bring a smile or create a reaction in people, either an emotional reaction or a psychological reaction. And that's really what acting is. I mean, it's about being able to convince people that you're telling the truth when you're not.
Right.
And all that vastly oversimplifies things. But look, when I get a script, sometimes they will send it to me and say, look, and we want you to be the advisor on this. And by the way, look at the role of
So-and-so.
Colonel Bretz, you know, and we want you to be that. So sometimes that happens. It happens a lot more nowadays than it used to.
Yeah.
It used to be that I would go through it and say, okay, I can do this. I know how to do this. I know the history of this, and I know how to train the people to do this. And there's this wonderful role here, and I'll politic for that. But nowadays, it's kind of, I'm accepted as, you know, if you want some guy who speaks the language and can bring some reality to all that gobbledygook jargon, die.
Yeah, well, and as I've mentioned at the top when I was introducing you, I mean, some of these films that you've been a part of are just unbelievable, well-known, very awarded. And one that comes to mind that I think resonates a lot with our audience and we talk about and reference a lot is Band of Brothers.
Oh, yeah.
And certainly, you know, you're talking about you getting to work with Steven Spielberg, with Tom Hanks. But more importantly, you were portraying a unit that probably prior to Band of Brothers, most people didn't know about. So
they didn't. Yeah.
What was it like getting involved in that project and working with people of that caliber?
Well, look, I didn't know Steven or Tom Hanks prior to that, but I got a call, and it was Steven Spielberg. And Spielberg had been a fan. I didn't know this, but he'd been a fan of my work in Platoon. And he'd heard about what I'd done and so on and so forth and how I'd trained the actors. And he said, look, we want you to come in and we want you to do, look, when you get a call from Steven Spielberg, you jump in the truck and down you go. So, and that's where I met Tom Hanks. And we decided that this was going to be what we were going to do right. And they really gave me sort of carte blanche. They said, look, whatever you need to train these people and get it right, let's get it done. And so it was, I actually did look at the role when I began to read the scripts. I did look at the role of Colonel Sink, who was the commanding officer of the 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment, of which Easy Company was part. And I said, you know, I know this guy. He's the crusty kind of leader that I think I was, and I really know this. So I went to Tom Hanks and I said, look, I think this was at the end of our training. I went and said, you know, I don't know if you've cast an actor yet, but I really need to do Colonel Sink. And he was very supportive. He said, yeah, you know, I think you do. And so I got cast as Colonel Sink, and it was a wonderful acting experience. I love to portray somebody on screen that's real. I played Leonard Wood, for instance, in the Rough Riders with Tom Berenger as Teddy Roosevelt. And I was able to study him and find out who he was and what he was about and that sort of thing. And with Sink, who retired from as a major general from the United States Army, with him, I was able to contact his family and really research him. They sent me. I found some tapes of speeches that Colonel Sink had given. And so I'd walk around listening to them all day so I could get that North Carolina drawl that he spoke with. And when you're a little mimic, when you're a little actor, you know, you kind of learn how to do that. So So that was a joy, a real joy, because I had trained Easy Company, and they all looked at me as kind of the colonel anyway.
Right.
So it slid right in, and it fit right in, and it was a really, really a comfortable coat to wear during the 9 months it took us to do Band of Brothers.
Yeah, and it just made sense, obviously, that you were their commander after having commanded them in the technical advisor role. Did you know, though, when you were all filming that miniseries, did you know that it was going to be special? Did you have a sense of what it was going to be, or this was just another project for you?
No, it was something special, and that had to do with it being Steven Spielberg and,
Sure.
and Tom Hanks. So I knew that it wasn't going to be amateur hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very, very familiar with the book, Band of Brothers, Stephen Ambrose.
Sure.
And I had read it a number of times, and I knew what he was after. He was after little individual stories, not the big broad brush that you see in The Longest Day and Bridge Too Far and so on. So he focused on that one company, and the men who made up that company, and the man who led it, of course, Dick Winters. And so I knew that if we paid attention, if we did it in the spirit of Ambrose's interviews and in the spirit of the people, and at the time, of course, some of them were still alive, and so we were able to talk to them and kind of enmesh their actual experience, their firsthand experiences with what we were doing. So I knew it was going to be something special. How special, I didn't know. I mean, to this day, it's one of those things that I'm very happy and very proud, but it's going to be a legacy.
Mm-hmm.
That will live on long after all of us, and even the actors to this day, we're all in contact with each other.
That's awesome.
And we have a barbecue once a year, and everybody comes in, and it's really fantastic. We've gone on to do other things, but Band of Brothers is the common denominator. Got
it. And I can't say enough. It's such an unbelievable series. You were amazing in it, and it's something that I truly enjoy, and I've watched, probably more than 30 times at this point. But speaking of just military movies in general, do you ever just watch things on television or at the movies that you were not working on yourself and kind of just nitpick? Is it just a force of habit at this point?
Sure. No, it is a force of habit. In fact, my wife tells me she can't watch a military movie with me because, I'll just say, no, that's wrong. And why is that communist doing that? And, So I do watch them. I watch a lot of things that I didn't work on, a lot of the old things, because it gives me a basis of comparison. I can look at this and say, oh my God, come on. That's nonsense. And didn't they know better? And plain fact of the matter is they didn't, with some exceptions. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Sam Fuller. And I just, the other day here in Los Angeles, his Steel Helmet was on.
Mm-hmm.
What a marvelous film. And he did it for $250,000 in some park here in LA. But Fuller, because of his own experience with the 1st Infantry Division in World War II, he knows soldiers and he knows how they react. And so with the exception of people like Fuller, I'm pretty critical of the old stuff that was done.
Sure.
I understand why it was done.
Sure.
But I think we do a much better job today.
Thanks to the Dale Dyes of the world.
So
in addition to the movies and television, though, you're also an accomplished novelist. And what are you working on currently?
Well, I thank you for the adjective accomplished. I am a novelist. The thing about me is that motion pictures and television, where I've made my reputation and my name, they only do war movies every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to keep at it. I wanted to keep hammering that agenda of mine. And so being a creative type with a degree in English literature, I decided I would start telling stories in books.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that. And I think to date, I've got about 13 or 14 novels out there.
That's unbelievable.
The current one, thank you, In fact, my wife and I started our own publishing company because we got tired of the New York nonsense.
Sure.
And we started a company called Warriors Publishing Group, which is an offshoot of my company, Warriors Incorporated, which is technical advisor to movies and television. And we've done just magic with it. We've got some great titles, including my own, but not necessarily just my own. We didn't do it for that reason. We've got, for instance, Del Vecchio's 13th Valley, a great Vietnam book. We got the reprint rights to that, and we now publish all of his books. But my books, I've been a great fan of Lee Child and the Jack Reacher character. I mean, that just trips my trigger. I love that. Although I've never met Lee Child, I would like to one of these days. And so I decided, maybe I'll do a series with a recurring character.
Sure.
And so I did. I started the Files series of books, and the character is a retired Marine. How about that? By the name of Shake Davis. And the hook to the books, he gets himself involved in all sorts of precarious situations around the world, working sub rosa for various intelligence agencies and that sort of thing. But the hook is that in each book, he either gets involved in or revisits some famous battlefield. The Chosen File, he goes to North Korea. The Beirut File, he goes to Beirut. Aztec File, he goes to the halls of Montezuma. And the most recent one, the 9th book in the series, is a book called Delta File. Watch this. This is how good I am at this. It's called Delta File.
There you go.
And it's more personal than all of the rest of them. You get a look at who Shake Davis is and where he came from and that sort of thing. And he gets involved in a nefarious adventure while he's retracing his boyhood footsteps.
Well, that's fantastic.
And they're all available, by the way, on Amazon as ebooks in any format that you want, or at Warriors Publishing Group.
Well, that's fantastic. And, I think you strike me, sir, as someone I could talk to for hours on end, but I've taken a lot of your time already. And just know that, I really respect the fact that you found your way and became very accomplished after your military career. So oftentimes veterans have a tough time finding their way. And you certainly did that and carved out a tremendous life for yourself working in Hollywood. And I'll just leave you with these last two quick questions before we wrap up here.
Okay, but before you do that, let me say that that's a very high compliment from you, because I do it for guys like you, guys who understand. So
we appreciate it, sir.
Now Absolutely. Carry on with your question.
I mean, you've worked with unbelievable people. So real quick, favorite actor you've ever worked with?
Probably Tom Berenger, Tommy Lee Jones, Tom Hanks, Morgan Freeman.
So all the Toms.
All the Toms. Morgan Freeman is a great guy to work with.
I mean, he's pretty accomplished himself, so that's a great answer. And then I feel like I might know the answer to the second one, but favorite director you've worked with?
There are a number of them. I really like a director by the name of John Dahl, who did The Great Raid. I like Oliver Stone, although nobody else seems to. And I think Steven Spielberg, that's the answer I thought you were expecting, is wonderful to work for. What the directors who are really close to my heart are the ones who use me properly, who keep me at their elbow and let me help with performances and that sort of thing. Because they know I now speak the language that their actors are speaking. Right. So those guys are terrific. And there's probably 6 or 8 more, but you caught me flat-footed. So take those as a start.
All right. Well, sir, I appreciate your time today. If you ever find yourself consulting on a movie about a veteran turned podcaster, I'm happy to help you consult on that. But for today, I appreciate you.
Listen, the way Hollywood is going, it may be that's the only thing we can do is movies about podcasters in a remote fashion.
Well, I'll be ready. I'll be ready when you make that phone call. So,
all right, good deal.
All right, thank you very much, sir.
Please say hi to everybody there at your headquarters. I'm sorry I didn't get to meet the other two, but maybe we'll do another one later on.
Absolutely, that'd be fantastic. So thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.